often we talk about being the best version of ourselves. What do you mean when you say being the best version of ourselves?
So I believe there is a solution to all human pain and suffering. And it comes from authenticity. So cognitive consistency, we know, breeds significant benefits to both mental and physical health, whereas cognitive dissonance creates the opposite, so unwellness. And I think many of the ills of the world are created when there is dissonance between, or difference between what you think, what you say, and what you do. Whereas if you have consistency, cognitive consistency, what you think, what you say, and what you do is all the same, then you're being purely authentic, and that's the best version of you.
The word best is very vague, right? Like, it's such a woolly, amorphous word. The reason I ask you this is because I think everyone's like, I want to be the best me I can be, but what is best?
That's a beautiful question. It's a beautiful question. So when I say authenticity, I mean genuine authenticity. So when we think of the word best, we think of highest or number one or whatnot, of what it means to us. So for me, being the best version of me means being true to myself, living my values, being authentic, showing up in the way that I choose to, rather than how the environment determines how I appear or should appear. So being able to be you on your terms in every given moment. I do think your question points to something that is prevalent, though, in our society, which is the fact that so many people, when they think of the best version of themselves, they think of, as you say, an amorphous idea based on a hyper-capitalist society around have your protein shake at this time, get up at this time in the morning.
As efficient as possible.
Absolutely. And then you become a human doing, not a human being. Whereas for me, it is pure authenticity. So best as in me showing up how I want to show up in the world.
How do I know how I want to show up? Because society has told me how I should, and then my parents did, and then this influencer on social media did, and then I think I want this, but it doesn't feel very good, or whatever, and then on the list goes.
You have to do the work.
Okay, what's the work?
The work is understanding who you are. So discovering your values, understanding actually what feels good and what feels bad in my certain thoughts, actions, and behaviors. So there are certain things that work for you. So you'll do something and you feel a flow state, you feel energized, you feel happy. And then there are certain things where you feel the complete opposite. You're being drained. There are certain conversations that you'll have with certain people and you just think, I feel great. I was speaking to a chap this morning, first time we've ever spoken. We were introduced some time ago, but we've both been very busy. And he's working with one of the biggest fashion brands in Japan about using an organic material to build homes for people who are in certain parts of the world where they're having really massive challenges. That was a beautiful conversation because it was about people who have power to do things in the world, choosing to use that power and that energy to actually improve and impact the lives of others purely for philanthropic reasons. They don't want anything in return. That kind of conversation gives to me, it feeds me. Now, if I'm speaking to somebody else and they're thinking pure profit, bottom line, we don't care about humans, it's all about me, that drains me because it's not my values. Everyone has different values, so you have to do the work. You have to understand who you are. Sometimes that's overcoming trauma. It's understanding the things that you've gone through, things in your environment that didn't work for you, expectations from society, from teachers, from parents. But you need to do the work. I can give you an example of an exercise which is really useful, which is about self-authoring. So understanding your life up until this point. And you can split this into periods of time or epochs or whatever. And you say the first 10 years of my life, the next 10 years or 5 years, however you want to split it up. And you remember all the things that affected you in a way that felt uncomfortable or caused you harm or you feel traumatic. Now, if you write, so the first part of this is just write it out. Write it out. And what you find is you'll write it out as if you're still there because you've not gotten to the next bit yet. You do that to your entire life until now. This is something I did. And then you go back and you're probably going to have about 30,000 words, depending on how many things in your life have caused you some amount of stress or trauma.
Okay.
You go back again and you write about it as if you are understanding it as you are today. So the person you are today. Because when you first write about things that happen to you, it's very easy to put yourself in the state as if you were there. So that thing that happened to you when you were a 7-year-old and a teacher said something that was very unkind because they were just unthinking in a moment and it really affected you in a particular place. And that's a really banal kind of example, but for some people that's huge.
Which is very common.
Absolutely.
And infects us in this really insidious way where we don't know it's affected us. Our child brain just took it verbatim.
And we are still that child until...
Yeah.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the show, or back to the show for those of you who aren't new here. Getting lots of new faces these days, and so I just wanted to take a quick sec to introduce myself. Hey, I'm Seven, and also to give you a quick announcement. As a little bit of background, this show used to be very focused on what it meant to be a leader, but I quickly realized I already had my answer, which is that I believe you already are one. And it's just about becoming more of that person you want to be. So we're talking about the world, self-leadership, personal development, humanity, discovery, self-discovery, and so much more. This is a place where deep conversations happen in a way that helps you become more of that person you want to be. And so if you appreciate that and you want to help us grow, but I know you're tired of people hearing, we've been hearing this for over a decade, like and subscribe and share the episode, and I get it, but look, it is genuinely the biggest and best thing that you can do. I don't play ads or any crap like that. I do this and take this time to say thank you because I appreciate you and where this show is going. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Lots of love, and let's get on with the episode.
So you then look at it as if you would look at it today, and you will look at it with more compassion for you. You will look at it with more empathy for you. So you do that piece of work, again, you've got maybe 30,000 words, and then you take a break. Obviously, this happens over a 6-month to a year period. For me, it took about 6 months. And then you go back again, and this time, with every scenario that you've written out that happened to you up until this point, you go, what do I want this to mean? So what does this mean for me in a way that helps me get to where I want to be? And that is the secret formula. And there are lots of other things that you can do. There's lots of training on your different systems in the body, so your nervous systems and how they react to certain things. There may be a tone of voice that makes you feel a particular way inside your body and you don't understand why, and you have to unpack that so that actually you go, I don't need to feel fear in a situation like that. Or maybe someone wears a particular type of outfit, or you see someone in the street, or someone's too loud and you have hypervigilance because when you were younger, you're like, loud noises mean this. Actually, they don't anymore. So to know oneself, to understand your values, you have to do the work. And that's by understanding from the moment you were born until now, what's that journey? Who are you?
We often conflate who we are with what we do. And then when I go around the group, right, so like I run a run club, for example, I have a number of events, and I always want them to have elements of energizers and meditations, visualization, self-reflection, something meaningful beyond work. I don't run networking events anymore. I used to, and I got super bored of it for the reasons you just mentioned. Even if someone's super passionate about what they're doing, it still gets very this is an assignment. I will assign this value of who I am. And then we don't understand who we are, and then we don't connect. We've connected on LinkedIn, but we don't connect.
Yeah.
And it's always very uncomfortable for people to answer this question of like, who am I? And I also find even my answer, doing it every week, changes a tiny bit every week. So in other words, who are we, right? Mm-hmm. Who are we separate from what we do or our identity? And how do we know? How do we find out?
So we used to have a very, in certain theories, we would say structuralist. So there was a structuralist worldview. You are X, and that is it. And it's stratified. Okay. So in British society, depending on who you were born to, you were stratified by class, by what your future capabilities would be, etc., etc., etc. Everything was determined by your who you were born to. Mm-hmm. That was it. Your family lineage.
The identity assigned.
Oh yes. You were defined by the job that you had, etc. So I'll give you an example of this. So in the 1960s and 70s, there was a massive migration. Not many people know their history, so maybe this is a lesson for some people. There was a massive migration of doctors from the UK, leaving the UK to go to America and Australia. Why? Because they were considered low in our stratified system. We may think that's odd today because we value doctors. Mm. But in the 60s and 70s Britain, there was this idea that if you had to go through a certain type of education, then you were just not that good. Your lineage wasn't that good. You had to work hard to get where you need to be. Well, you're just not one of us, are you?
Oh, interesting. That's very British, like classist stereotype, isn't it? That's fascinating.
And it's structuralist.
I didn't know this.
It's structuralist. So it's you are what we say you are because it works for us.
Yes. And who's we as well?
We is the prevailing power that things serve.
Sure.
So haves and have-nots. It's great to have a workforce if you're in charge of it. Mm-hmm. Not so much if you're the people having to work for nothing. Mm-hmm. So Britain has a history of that, a very structuralist way of thinking. So you get structuralism and then you get post-structuralism, which is about, well, actually, we understand that all the systems that we have created as human beings were predominantly built or defined by white upper-class men who determined these ideas around law and all the rest of it based on what worked for them and no one else. So when we understood that actually everything is finite and there is no inherent meaning in certain things. So we think about semiotics, for example. The words I'm using, you only understand them because we have a shared belief of what they could mean for both of us based on language development, okay? There may be certain words that I say, and you might feel very differently about those words. They're how I feel about those words. And this is the idea of utterance and the fact that language is such a tricky thing to navigate, even in one's mother tongue. But anyway, we understand that we've made up a bunch of words, and that makes life a little bit easier, and that's a structure. So when you go post-structure, you realize that all these things that we think are naturalized actually aren't natural at all. They're just ideas that some bloke came up with one day. So where does that bring us? It brings us that if we understand that everything around us structurally are just ideas that have been the strongest, that Richard Dawkins would talk about, the aggressive meme, mimenic effects in society where the strongest ideas survive and proliferate. Actually, again, these are just ideas that someone's going with. So you have to work out for you, what does that mean to be a good human being? If there were no structures, if there wasn't anything that was saying you need to be X, how would you live? How would you choose to exist in the world? And that's where I think we should come from.
How you would choose to exist in the world. So we're not talking about what your job would be necessarily, because again, we're not talking about what you do, we're talking about who you are. I think like sometimes I would get asked the question when I was pivoting my career some time ago, you know, if money wasn't a concern, what would you do? And I think that's meant to help you be more creative and to think outside the box. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, but I do need money. So, and a lot of people actually can derive a lot of meaning, not from what they do that makes the money, but from what they do outside of the job that makes the money. You can be an accountant who's like, accountancy sounds kind of boring, but you're very fulfilled because of a number of other things. How do we, I think there's almost a how do we separate the two question in here because of the way our culture is.
It's a good question, but I think there's no easy way to answer it. There are just options.
Okay.
There are only options in our current system.
Okay.
So the easiest route is to be born wealthy.
Right.
Born wealthy, born with loads of options.
Okay.
Then you can choose how you navigate the world because somebody did all the work a long time ago. If you are like me and you grew up on a council estate in the East Midlands in the UK and your options were very limited, you have to first try and navigate, actually, how does the world work? What do I need to be successful within this framework that exists where I'm geographically located? And as a very young child, that's something I tried to navigate, tried to understand. Okay, what systems are operating here? How do I get to a point where I get more options and choices about who I want to be? And that's really difficult. It's not easy for anyone. A lot of people become personified by the environment in which they find themselves in when they're born. Other people can be the complete opposite to that, which is what I did. I became the opposite to where I grew up. And I think because we have to do something productive, the wealthiest people that I've ever met have exactly the same emotional cycles as the poorest people I know.
So what are those cycles?
Despair, gratitude, love, horror, disappointment, frustration, heart attacks. They have the same level of stress.
Yes, we all feel the same emotions.
Yeah.
When you say cycles.
So cycles as in they're having the same highs and the same lows.
Okay.
And at the same level, even though the circumstances are completely different. And you'd think, wait, that human being has solved the economic challenge. Surely they don't feel as much stress as the single mother on the council estate who's working 3 jobs to get by. But actually, when you spend time with these people, you realize that actually we're all existing as human beings. These kind of advanced mammals with this really old operating system, and we're all struggling in our own ways. So for me, it's obviously, again, the way that you're born, who you're born to, gives you very different options. But I think when it comes to career, you have to say, okay, why would that be the career for me? What is it that I love about that? What brings me joy? And it doesn't matter what you do. So I used to be a musician. I thought that was my goal for life, that I was always going to be a musician. You know, I was featured nationally and I did tours and I toured Europe and all that good stuff. I thought that was my life. Then I started to learn about the music industry and I realized this isn't a good place for somebody who wants to be healthy in lots of different ways. And it made me realize, actually, I'd rather do something that fulfills me in different ways and enables me to have my health. So I think whatever you decide to do, it doesn't matter, there'll be bits of it that are just not nice or you won't enjoy. And you have to negotiate, because there are only so many options in the world. You have to negotiate what kind of career is going to give me the balance of all the things that I desire. And that could be economic security, but not to the detriment of your values. That's the tricky bit. I know guys who, they have the 6-figure salary or the 7-figure salary, and they are depressed. Because every day, and because money, you earn a certain amount of money, you earn over that amount. All the psychological studies say happiness doesn't increase, it actually decreases. And why is that? Is that because once we've solved the economic problems, there isn't any problems to solve, and we just concentrate on what we're doing at work, and if that's not really fulfilling, we then start to question why we've spent the last 30 years as working as an accountant or a lawyer or whatever it is. And some people get joy from that, and some people don't. So that's the bit we've got to work out, hopefully, before we go to university.
There are a few things there I want to pick up on. The first is this idea of always living by those values. There's a big chunk of Buddhist principle, for example, right? So right action, right words, right thoughts. You would ideally, if you were a good Buddhist, for example, always be or never be saying anything that wasn't promoting unity, togetherness, positive outcome. But sometimes you have to walk into a business room, into a negotiation with a business person on the other side of the table who is a bit of an asshole, who wants to take from you and manipulate, and you need to play the game a little bit. You need to operate in society. And we don't live in a utopic society. Sometimes people try to take advantage of us, and we need to be aware of that and know how to deal with that. So the first thing I want to pick up on out of what you said is how we navigate a world that maybe doesn't care about our values, right? I care about my values. I set some of these values, these principles, virtues I want to live by. Sometimes I can't do them. Or sometimes I can try my best, and the best I can do is limited right now. So how do I navigate that? How do I know when to let that go? To what extent can I flex? What are your thoughts?
Control the controllables, ignore the rest.
Ignore completely.
You cannot... So if I ask somebody who are you responsible for, they may have some kind of ideas about this and that. No. That's not the right answer. There is only one human being on this planet that you can control the thoughts, actions, words of. Just one. So who are you responsible for?
Yeah, yourself. Well, but I would challenge that personally. I would say you can only control yourself. And arguably, we can't even fully control ourselves because our brain, we have an unconscious, we have a subconscious. But theoretically, we control ourselves. But we still have a responsibility over more than ourselves. And we can influence far more than ourselves.
So those different ideas, I think, who are you responsible for? It's just how you navigate, how you show up, how you communicate with the world around you. Parents struggle with this because children often are the opposite to those that birthed them, and that's okay. We have to always understand we can do the best that we can do. We can be the best version of ourselves on our terms, but we have to always understand that we are only responsible for ourselves. We cannot control anybody else. So we control the controllables. Yes, you will get intrusive thoughts. Yes, sometimes you'll get moods that you don't understand, and it's really useful if you can actually dig a little deeper and understand what's happening within yourself so you can navigate you better. There are things like diets and the way you eat and the environments you're in. Some people can be in a very crowded bar with lots of loud noises and feel amazing, feel like they're getting fed from that environment. Other people will get very tired very quickly.
I'm one of them.
So
Very familiar.
Absolutely. See, understanding you and operating on your terms is the way to do it. Now, yes, there will be nefarious characters. There will be people who have malevolent desires that are probably completely antithetical to what you want to do in the world. Again, there's nothing you can do about that. There will always be people who will try and take advantage of you because that's just the world we live in. And we have to remember there's a significant population of people who have certain challenges in their brain chemistry. They may be on the psychopathy level. So they may navigate the world very differently to people who do have empathy.
And psychopathy is, would you describe it as the opposite of empathy almost?
So there are different levels of psychopathy. There are people who have certain levels of empathy, may be able to recognize empathy, but still do the bad thing because at the end of the day, they just don't have enough of it. There are others that have no feeling of empathy at all and can do the most abhorrent things if they choose to. And that's a very big subject. But I think recognizing that, yes, there are always going to be characters out there that don't have your best wishes at heart. And that's okay, because you're not responsible for them. You're only responsible for you. And if your value is about making the world a better place and trying to get people to come together more and be more collectivistic and have these Buddhist ideals about being one and oneness, we're all the same, we should all look after each other. They're all very beautiful things. I do think that our generation, I know I'm a little bit older than you, but still the same generation, are more considered when it comes to thinking, can we actually make this place far better than when we arrived? And I think that is the prevailing course of the epoch that we're entering. Even though those that are a generation or two generations above seem to have the opposite ideas, thinking about certain world leaders at the moment and the way they navigate.
Well, there's an egotism that is rife in our leadership positions. And I'm careful not to say our leaders, because there's a difference between doing and being. But anyway, this is a very human conflict. And it sounds like what you're suggesting is our way of navigating the external conflict is by creating an internal guiding system. Now, this, as the same way that the word best can be quite vague, and I was really interested in it, I'm also really interested in what you mean by our terms. Because I think, again, it sounds obvious contextually, right? Yeah. I want to do this on my terms. Okay, well, have you ever written a contract before? Like, do you know what the terms mean in the contract? I think about this because often, again, the same way that the word best does, society, other people, our parents, our culture tell us or prescribe to us what our terms should be, right? Here's what you should not care about. Here's what you should be able to be lax on. Here's what you should take as gospel and always fight about. These are the other people, and you should always protect your people and not the... And then so our terms become filtered through that paradigm, through that lens, that filter, and then that becomes our terms, right? So on my terms, but my terms are basically the same as this person who has these beliefs over here because they're the ones that taught me what my terms should be, and I didn't really think for myself. So I think there's two things in here. One is thinking for ourselves, and number two is what do we mean by our terms?
So I'll give you an example. 11 years ago, I formed Mantra Media, the global branding and marketing firm. And we've had ancillary benefits as a consequence of operating on our terms. Okay. So at the start of the business, we came up with the tagline, driven by ethics, guided by knowledge, which was all about we're only going to do things that we feel are ethical. We're only going to represent businesses and brands and charities and government agencies that are making people's lives better. And anything that makes the world worse, i.e. fast fashion, or anything that causes pain or suffering, we're not going to represent them. So we're not going to work with McDonald's because we think fast food is not very good. We're not going to work with companies like Topman or Topshop because we think fast fashion is just making garner a massive landfill or mountain of used clothes. So we were very resolute in that, and we have been for over a decade now. What's happened as a consequence is in 2020, I was featured in Forbes as the ethical marketer. And after that, we started, well, before that, we did national and international campaigns, worked with the Invictus athletes in Australia. And we've gone from strength to strength working with large organizations around the world because they've said, we want to do good stuff too. We want to be part of that. And we're still extremely picky about who we work with. And there's been many contracts that have been offered us that economically would have been awesome. We would have been like, well, we're probably not going to need to work for another 4 years or whatever. But the values of those organizations didn't meet our values. So they didn't meet our terms. And many people would not make that decision. Now, if you look at the world in my industry in branding and marketing, what you find is a lot of those big gargantuan agencies now are all failing. So WPP have come out and they've said, we're going to get rid of X amount of our workforce. We don't know what to do. You've got another one of the large agencies, I think Saatchi or something. Yes, we're getting rid of 7,000 members of our staff or whatever. And you're having this big turn now of these organizations that are struggling because they would represent, Philip Morris and the tobacco brands and the oil brands, and we just said no. And now people are coming to us because we know what we stand for and we're cognitively consistent.
Is this actually, and this is a good point, I think a lot more of us now have heard of the term cognitive dissonance. I had just never put two and two together that therefore there means there's an opposing force to that. Cognitive consistency. That means a consistency of thought, right? So I've actually on a previous episode talked to someone about cognitive diversity. So the same way we have these concepts in the physical world, we've also got them as mental concepts. But again, we have these intrusive thoughts. We have these patterns, right? How do we stay consistent despite patterns and moods that take us all over the place? And if an underpinning of a good value system is cognitive consistency, then I need to stay consistent. But sometimes it's hard to stay consistent with my morning routine, getting up at the same time, exercising, with my diet. If it's challenging to stay consistent with some of those even most basic things, how do I stay consistent with my thoughts?
Depends how important it is to you. Okay. So the Greeks were really good at this. They diarized a lot. So what am I thinking and feeling today? What have I eaten today? How do these things affect each other? So if you find that you're having maybe a lot of intrusive thoughts, you're feeling more tired than usual, your system isn't operating at its optimum, there'll be reasons. How did you sleep last night? Did you have alcohol before you went to bed? Have you been as physically active as you need to? Have you been outside enough? Have you had contact with friends? Have you laughed enough? Have you had too much sugar today? Or too much salt? Or not enough water? All of these things will impact the way that you think, feel, and show up in the world. So the advice I always give to people is have a diary. Not in the, today I went to, not that kind of diary, but things that impact you. So today, woke up, I did yoga for this amount of time, I did some meditation, I ate this for breakfast, and did my day, this was successful, this felt good, blah, 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 blah. I felt amazing. Woke up the next day, I went to bed at 9 o'clock, read in bed until 10, fell asleep. Woke up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning feeling amazing. And then you can look back on that day and go, oh, so that was the pattern. And then maybe you're really good at Mondays and Tuesdays, and Wednesdays it falls apart. And then on Wednesday you go, oh, I'm just staring at Instagram for 3 hours in bed, or TikTok, or whatever people choose to do. And then, but you record it still. And then the next day you go, I feel rubbish today. Mm-hmm. And you go, okay, so what happened on Wednesday that didn't happen on Tuesday?
Do you know what's interesting? Because that sounds so obvious when you say it out loud. And I think most of us, we actually know. The challenge, especially now that knowledge is so free, it's so easy and free and accessible. The challenge, a lot of us still don't do the thing. Knowledge isn't the challenge. Application of knowledge is the challenge. And it sounds like by writing it out, even if it's super simple, you're just almost admitting to yourself. It's like a second person. Sometimes I will get people to reflect in second person instead of in first person. So looking in the mirror and saying to the other person, using the word you, as if they're another person. Almost getting our brains to move outside of itself, getting our consciousness to move outside of our 2D awareness of what we're seeing right in front of us, and almost makes the brain understand the thing that it knows but doesn't ever apply and so never acts upon. That's really interesting. What is your story? You mentioned earlier that you are the opposite, or you made yourself the opposite of the environment you grew up in. What was that environment, and what made you so opposite to it?
So I recently, so last year I looked at the house I grew up in, and you couldn't actually see the house I grew up in. There was just police tape, police car, and it was all blurred out.
On like Google Maps or something?
Oh, yes.
Oh, interesting. When you said you looked at it, I was thinking, did you go visit? Did you look at Google Maps?
Google Maps. And I was trying to show a friend. And then I had a look a couple of weeks ago, actually, because I was thinking again about that time. And it's still blurred.
Oh, my God.
It's still blurred out. I think lots of not very nice things have happened in that house over... It's not a nice area. And that would be a kind way of putting it.
Okay.
And I was showing somebody the other day. So there was a big factory next to the house I grew up in, and I remember one day finding out, and I would have been about 6 years old. The Avon lady, I don't know if you're aware what an Avon lady is, somebody who sells cosmetics to your front door, was stuffed in the air conditioning unit in that factory next to me.
Wow.
Obviously, she wasn't alive.
Wow.
There was some horrible things that happened to the neighbours' kids 2 doors down. I would often have to navigate walking on syringes as getting to school in the morning. I was often chased by rabid dogs. It's just the craziest things when I look back on it. And this was my day-to-day from the age of like 4 years old. I remember children would just pee in the middle of the street, in the middle of the day. That was normal. So, I'd be 7, 8, 9 years old, and kids would be peeing in the street, the same age as me. And I'm like, that's crazy. So I had a challenge in a few different fronts. So yes, I was surrounded by this aggression, violence, drugs, etc., etc. And then when I went to school, because I went to a pretty good school, which wasn't that too far to walk, it was probably a half an hour walk, and it was a Catholic school, and I was the kid with the foreign name. And at the time, there was the UK has always had an interesting way of welcoming people who aren't from here. And because of my foreign name, I was considered other. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not one of us, are you? So I had challenges then in education. And because I was from the poor area, I was treated very differently as well. Because a lot of those kids that went to that school came from wealthy families, etc. So there are lots of dimensions to that I had to unpack. I didn't really unpack that until later in life. So understanding that the world around me was not going to facilitate me getting to where I felt I wanted to be, which is having freedom and choice and all that good stuff, I decided that, well, if I could think differently, and I used to get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning when I was a kid and just watch the sunrise. I was a weird kid. And I just used to think. I just loved kind of ideating on the world that I embodied. And I thought, well, if I learn enough, because I've heard that knowledge is power, perhaps I can navigate the world better and get to where I need to be. So I just read an encyclopedia, and then I read more encyclopedias, and then I read more. And this is from the age of like 6 years old. I just read and read and read. I was a voracious learner. I wanted to learn about everything because I thought the more I knew, the more I could navigate the world better. And whereas children who grew up where in the surrounding area turned to drugs or either ended up dead or in prison, I ended up going to university. And that was how my journey started. But I think the things that have aided me are resilience. I know what it's like to be in extreme situations and not know if you're going to get out the other end of them. And I was given a fire in my belly, which was like, no one's going to give you anything. No one's going to help. You've got to navigate this, or that's it, mate. And that made me very self-reliant to be able to push forward.
When you look out at the environment around you, you receive signals from it, and then you get the opportunity to respond.
Yeah.
And most people, they respond by conforming to it. There are a rare few of us who look at it, and regardless of age, so you were a very young person, your brain still isn't very, developed, right? It isn't developed fully until we're 25 or whatever, but even then, if you're under 7 years old, you're very neuroplastic. You're just picking things up like a sponge. And yet somehow there was still the thought of, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And a rare few of us are able to do that, where instead of getting sucked in, we want to be outside of that. And it's like, that seems really lucky almost. Like you were physically, it's a really challenging place to be. You were, in a way, the lucky one in your environment, being able to see that. And I don't mean that in a reductive way. I mean that in there's a gift there that I would want to spread to everyone if I could, right? And I want to understand what that was. Like there's an inner wisdom or knowingness within you despite the environment, or that was stronger than what the human body and brain would have normally had you do in that environment. It normally would have had you joining in those kids on your street.
Yeah. I think curiosity was one of the big things. So I remember being about 7 or 8 years old, and I found a book that had meditation exercises in it. I remember one day getting this book and sitting at the top of the stairs. And I was on my own, carpeted stairs. Give you a bit of insight into the environment I grew up in. Massive 6-foot punch bag at the top of the stairs. And I sat next to this punch bag that was at the top of right at the top of the stairs in our house. And saw these meditation exercises. It's like breathe in, breathe out, sit in this way. And I just did it because I wanted to see what happened. I fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
I remember waking up feeling this, again, I was just a kid, but feeling this overwhelming calm and sense of it's all going to be okay. Because I think sometimes when you're in a certain environment, and you will still be a child, and you will still be, taking in bad messages, and you still will have to understand the difference between react and respond. React is an instant, the impulsive, how you instantly navigate a stimulus, whereas to respond is to take a beat. You react in the moment, you respond by taking a beat. Actually, how do I want to navigate this? And I think I was very good at that. And I think that was curious, because I was always thinking there is a way to navigate this situation. I don't think I'm imbued with any specialness or gifts, because everything I've had to do has been very much trial and error, and I've had to. I think one of the things that has aided me is outstanding endeavour. So I will work harder than anyone else will ever expect. A lot of people know that about me. If I want to get to the end of something, I will work 24/7 to make sure I produce the best possible thing in whatever scenario that is to get the result. And that's just me. I'm very hardworking. But I think we all have that potential. We all have that capacity. It's whether we're willing to do the work. None of this is easy. Everything worth anything in life takes effort, is hard, and that's why it's worth doing. Anything that comes easy, there's probably something at the end of it that's not useful.
I don't know what your perspective is on things like this, but to be able to, or to have the immediate thought of, this doesn't make sense, I'm outside of this, to have these synchronicities of finding meditation books and wanting to watch the sunrise at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. These are quote unquote not normal. And they're really good things that most of us have to teach ourselves. You had this propensity towards it, and it feels to me like it's really positively impacted you. And I want us all to be able to take some of that away. Not in a reductive way, as in pick that up from you. What you say, curiosity, but I could easily, if I was playing devil's advocate, right, I can ask the question, why should I be curious about the sunrise? Right? Why should I be curious about sitting and meditating? Why should I ask why?
There is a core. You're absolutely right. So there is a core to this. Now I'll give you another idiosyncratic example of something I used to do as an older child that, again, will probably make more sense when I do this bit. So when I was 12 years old, I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch Open University Applied Mathematics.
And you were 5?
No, at 12 years old.
Oh,
just get out the 5 in the morning.
Get out the 5, sorry.
And the reason for that is I loved learning.
Okay.
I just wanted to know. And half of it I couldn't understand. But I thought if I just kept applying myself, and I kept getting up in the morning before everyone else, or I get up a couple of hours before everyone else got up, I would just learn. And I loved it. And I had notebooks, and I would just write and learn about science and applying mathematics and all that good stuff because I found it interesting. I loved learning. The core of this, and I think that getting up very early in the morning, watching the sunrise when it's quiet before all the craziness happens in the home and all the rest of it, I was very aware from a young age that I was, and this is probably going to sound straight, I've never said this before actually in an interview, so this is me. I was aware that I was alive.
Mm-hmm. That's called strange, yeah.
And I was also aware that it was finite. For some reason, I remembered again, I must have been about 6 years old. I was watching the sunrise. There was this understanding how many days are in the year, understanding how many years are in the average lifetime. There's only so many times I can do this. And I just realized that as a young age. And I don't know if that was the application of everything I was reading at the time, the fact I wanted to learn everything. I had this insatiable appetite for knowledge. And if I could give everybody that, we would live in a very different world. An insatiable appetite for knowledge. If something doesn't feel right, learn. If something doesn't work for you, learn. If you've just had a coffee somewhere and now your brain is all over the place, learn from it. Maybe you need to research the effects of coffee on your brain. There are all these things. All the knowledge is there. All the knowledge is out there, waiting for everybody. But they've just got to do the work. They can't be lazy. Laziness is the killer of dreams, because you can't get to where you want to be if you're not willing to put the effort in. So I think if we could create a world that was more conscientious, more considered, more caring, more careful, and that came from understanding you're not here for very long, change is inevitable, so strap in, and learn as much as possible so you navigate the world in the best way that you can for you, without causing harm to others. That's very Buddhist.
There's a question that I want to ask. I don't know if we'll be able to answer it, which is how does one become insatiable for anything consciously? For most of us, it's an unconscious thing. I was just super interested in this thing, right? If you can understand what creates that as a state, you can actually start to apply that to other people's perspectives, but I don't know if we'll be able to answer that.
So there is actually an answer.
Okay.
So have you ever put off doing something for a significant amount of time that in your mind you thought, I'm not going to enjoy that task. I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to enjoy it, or I'm just going to avoid it as long as possible. And maybe it's a task that's going to take a significant amount of time. But then you've put it off enough. You start doing the task, whatever it is. Maybe it's something you needed to read. Maybe it's certain equations you had to do, whatever. And you start doing it. And after half an hour, you're kind of enjoying this. You've got focus. And then after a bit longer, you're like, I think I'm going to do this for a lot longer. And something that you thought previously that you wouldn't enjoy at all, you find enjoyment in it. Focus, applied focus. If there are certain things that you're putting off because you don't think you'll enjoy them, try just focusing on them for half an hour, doing that thing and just letting yourself do it. There are certain things that I've applied myself to that I thought I would never have joy from. But then the focus of just being in that activity, it's like when you go to the gym. And if you're not somebody who enjoys the gym, I absolutely adore any physical activity. I love being physical. But some people don't. But on certain days, I don't feel like I want to. But after doing it for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, being at the gym, there is a point where your body starts to get a bit, I kind of like this. And then you're like, actually, I can go for an hour. And it's the same thing with anything. Anything you know is going to improve your life, give it time. And if you give it enough time, it becomes a habit that you didn't have.
A lot of what we've talked about gets very affected by culture, or the culture we live in. What values what should we value? The challenges that come up, the way people treat each other, right? Your entire story of your youth in that space that you were in, both at school and in your local area. Again, all of that's cultural challenges. Culture is dense. It's hard to shift. It impacts everything. We can have cultures within cultures. We can have microcultures, so an organizational culture. So culture is everything about all the collective identity, I suppose, beliefs, norms in a space. And the bigger the culture is, the more it theoretically influences you. Now, you do a lot of work between the UK and Japan. two very different cultures. We talked about this off camera of the hyper-individualism that's really prominent in the West, especially now, and a more collectivist society that can be a model of organizational culture, for example, but we still live within a very individualistic society. So what's your take on developing the cultural intelligence and the, maybe, I don't know if resilience would be the right word, but the ability to consciously choose the culture you're going to develop in your life, in your company, in your family, your own microculture, despite the culture out there?
Start from post-structuralism.
Okay.
Realize that everything is just an idea. Decide the ideas that work for you. Me and my business partner are pure examples of this. He comes from a Japanese culture, completely collectivistic. It's all we before me. I come from a very individualistic culture. It's all me before we. So in Japanese culture, they will respect the group over the individual. So the wants and the needs of the individual are ignored over the prevailing wants and needs of the group. And the opposite in the UK. People just consider themselves before they consider others, which is why we have quite an adversarial and conflict-ridden culture here. People are always kind of like, are you better than me? Am I better than you? Or this kind of...
I'm thinking immediately about Parliament and just the way they debate, quote unquote, each other.
One-upmanship. Yeah. And the wonderful thing that a lot of these people forget, or they haven't come to terms with, is that all the opinions that you care about won't exist in a very short period of time. And all the opinions that you care about of people and their children won't exist for a very long period of time. So everything that you're putting emphasis on to appear a particular way in front of others means very little for a very short period of time. And that should give people a bit more cognitive room to realize they don't actually have to care that much about that stuff, about being better than anybody else, or like they're perceived as X, Y, and Z. Just be you, be authentic. So for me, there are attributes about the Japanese culture that would massively improve the culture in the UK, and vice versa. And that's how me and my business partner navigate our businesses. It's because we, in equal measure, value the group and the individual. So the idea is that, yes, you should be free to be autonomous and do things the way to get the best results on your terms, but we should always make sure that we're considerate and caring to others. So in an ideal situation, let's say in the UK, no one would eat smelly food on trains. Because you'd think, because in Japan you don't do that. You just don't, because it's inconsiderate. What a thing. And in Japanese culture, in the school system, they could adopt a more, it's okay if you're not interested in that. But if you really enjoy this, let's nurture that love of this. And that's the learning bit, is actually you can have both. You can have individualism and collectivism. You can have a mixture of that. It's not this idea of left versus right and all that kind of, it's very silly. It's very draconian. And it makes no sense when you look at how actually the world works. And it's all there is a multiplicity of ecosystem that creates the situations that exist. It's not ABC. We're very linear in the West. This person did X, therefore bad person. It's not that straightforward. In many Eastern cultures, it's actually this person did this thing, there are all these factors from the moment they were born that facilitated the environment and situations that created this bad thing. There was a beautiful example years ago of somebody who did something abhorrent in a town in Japan. And it was an isolated incident. And the community said, they didn't say, grip the pitchforks out, chase him away. Da, da, da. They went, how did we create a culture where that happened?
Really? So they took that responsibility.
Yes.
What was it?
So it was a murder, and it was a young man that had murdered another young man. But they didn't say you, they went we.
We. Interesting. Because to take that responsibility admits guilt. I'm not sure guilt's the right word, but it is the word that comes to mind. Is it admits your responsibility, your role to play. And most people, because we're living in an individualistic society, will say, but that makes me a bad person. And I don't want to take that. And my ego doesn't like that. And so I don't want to take my part to play in
That's
this.
binary again.
Okay.
We need to move away from this. It's not either bad or good. It just is.
Yes.
Things happen. If you're having a deterministic viewpoint based on binary oppositions, yes, everything is just either good or bad. But you can't navigate life like that because we don't know if something in the moment is genuinely good or bad because we don't know what's coming next.
Yes.
There are so many scenarios, things that have happened to me, things that have probably happened to you, things that have happened to all of us, where in the moment, that was horrific. But as a consequence, I got here and I was able to do this. And now all of these lives have been enriched. So yeah, there are horrible things that happen to us and we can say that was a bad thing that happened to me. But there's also that thing of, okay, what do I want it? And it's going back to the thing, what do you want things to mean?
You think this is the biggest lesson we can, or one of the biggest lessons we can take? I'm thinking about, the cultural intelligence to understand that different people are different cultures are different, and to choose what to adopt within your own culture. This element of my life on my terms means whatever I want it to mean. So when you say what the outcomes are, now I have this much fuller picture of, well, if I know what the outcome is, I can reverse engineer what's most likely to get me there, not based on labeling good or bad, but based on, well, you say values.
There are certain things that I've achieved in business and life in general that don't make sense.
Okay.
Like
what?
Well, there are certain contracts that we've won from different parts of the world that, and I'll take you on the journey. At the start of each year, I'll meditate and I'll say, this year I want to do X. I want that kind of thing. I'd love to pitch to work with an airline, or I'd love to do this with a small country, an archipelago, and help them with their environmental needs, or blah, 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 blah. And then 3 months later, 6 months later, through some kind of strange machination, a meeting through a person, through another person, it happens. And I've had that so many times where I'll just say, wouldn't it be wonderful if? And then I go, hey, it'd be really nice to achieve that thing. And then through some kind of happenstance, it happens. It occurs. I leave it alone. I have a very, I do believe there's more than that we understand about our world because we keep learning and understanding more. But there seems to be a theme of those that have this intense emotional and cognitive intention on something they want. And then they let it go. And then 2 years later, they're sat in that house they imagined living in. Or they're with that partner that was the partner of their dreams. Or 3 months later, they've got that contract. Or da-da-da-da-da. And there's all of these things that just happen. And that's happened to me a lot through life. And I don't really know what that means. There are cognitive biases around positivity and, you know, anything that could lead you to that scenario and all that kind of stuff, and you just pay attention to when you hear certain things. So there's a psychological element to that, but I do believe there's some, what we would currently consider magic, because we don't understand it yet.
This level of quote-unquote manifestation, which can be a challenging word for some people, but, you know, this putting intention out into the universe picks it up, and you still need to do the work behind it, right? Like you said, you work incredibly hard. You put a lot of hours in, you put the elbow grease in. As a result, I almost see this like opportunity, right? You have to give the universe opportunities to give you what you want, and that requires work.
Yep.
Most folks who talk about manifestation don't really get that. It's one or the other thing. Yeah, exactly. Or they'll say they've manifested something, and it's like, maybe it was just a vibe. Anyway, all of this to come back around this, I want to bring us to a close with understanding. We've spent all this time talking about values. What makes a really good value? So let's say we value certain things that don't actually matter that much, right? There's one company I learned a little bit from years ago when I first started my career, who would shift values into virtues, ways you should aspire to be instead of assignments. Often people assign, my value is to work hard. Hard-workingness is one of my values. And what does it really mean? Is that a good value? I don't know. So what's your framework for what makes a good value and how we strive to achieve it?
Again, I don't think we can use the
value,
binary.
A useful value.
Whatever brings you closer to being authentic. So whatever value means that you're operating in an authentic way in how you navigate the world.
And authenticity is a syncing up of how you think, feel, and act.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what do you do that makes sense?
So it feels like there's a process here that we can go through. We can almost work backwards and go, how do you want to think, act, and feel? Use that to figure out your values. Use that to figure out, do that, and then, how do you want to think, act, and feel? Do the breaking down of what do you want anything to mean. So you're almost deconstructing an existing paradigm, setting yourself a new goal, and building up a new paradigm based on the new goal.
There's a wonderful phrase, act as if.
Okay.
So, I want to be here, I want to do X, I want to be the kind of person that does blah, blah, blah. Because I know that kind of person will get to there. Act as if. You want a six-pack. You know, people with six-packs, they eat in a particular way and they train in a particular way. Act as if you're one of those people. Do the work. Act as if. So you may feel, in this moment you're not X kind of person, but you want X kind of person's results. Act as if.
As if you are them.
As if you are the kind of person that gets those things. And sometimes that can change habits and behaviors. Because, as you say, the culture creates this ecosystem around us of often false values and false ideas, concepts of who we are and how we should navigate the world around us. And act as if can sometimes bring us back to, well, actually, I'm more of a person like that than like this, because I really enjoy that. Try different shoes.
Which is a part, actually, of that manifestation conversation. As if you are acting as if you're already the person that has all the results that you want. Even if it's just a rudimentary materialistic perception of things where people feel you're a certain thing, so they want to give you that thing. Or you have the expertise, okay, I'll hire you for the thing instead. Even if it's just a one-to-one basic, it still seems to speed things up, speed up that timeline.
Act as if.
It's so interesting thinking about values, because the word values is so thrown around. It feels very overused.
It is now. I mean, we've been preaching this stuff for over a decade.
Yeah.
And ethics, values, being the best version of yourself, all of this stuff was not in the lexicon. These weren't regularly used phrases. But we've been using them for over a decade. So it's interesting seeing how culture has caught up to us.
Yes.
So we have to keep developing new ideas.
Yeah, which is good. It keeps you on your toes. I really liked this because this has made practical something that gets often thrown around as rudimentary, high-level advice.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
It's like, live your values. What are your values? Have you written out your values? Do you have a value statement? Maybe you hear that a little bit less often, but it's usually something very straightforward. But again, there's a difference between knowledge and the application of knowledge. So maybe there's a difference between writing down a value that you have, or that you think you have, or you'd like to aspire to act like maybe with that loose thinking. There's a difference between that and applying a deeper sense of what an intrinsic value is. And I like that you're able to bring in these different cultural perspectives, because if you take wisdom from just one source, ultimately that source can become rigid and stale. When you can draw inspiration, draw wisdom, draw learning from different sources, and have that curiosity and the flexibility or adaptability to move it together, now I could have a value system that looks nothing like what my local culture says, but my local culture still really respects. And so I can still operate in a country like the UK, but I'm not a copy-paste version of where I came from.
No.
It's really beautiful. Dude, I've loved this. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you. I especially appreciate the way that you've been able to articulate moving from one place to another throughout your life. There is clearly a natural tendency within you. There's a desire, there's a deeper wisdom and knowingness that you were born with. And I don't mean to either reduce it or gratify it, right? Like you said, there's nothing special, quote unquote, in those words of special. There was a knowingness that most of us spend a lot longer cultivating, if we find it at all, that you've been able to really beautifully articulate. And I'm really excited for the even greater amount of work and impact you're going to do. I know you've been doing this for quite a while. There's obviously so much more to come, because to be able to be that curious about things that are so much deeper than the surface level in a way that's really really practical in a fulfilling way. And it's something I wish for so many people. So I hope they've taken that from this too, as I have.
I feel very grateful for the 7. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a closing question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. Everyone gets the same deep question to end things off. The show is called Lost and Searching. And so I'd love to know, what is the number one question that you are still searching for the answer to?
So I had to think about this, and I had a plethora of questions that kept going to, because there are lots of things I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really difficult, actually, to come up with with the question, because if you're insatiable for knowledge, you've got a million questions.
Yeah, this is a really good point.
And then I was wondering whether I should make a joke or not, something silly I'd like to know, because there are lots of silly things that I would like to know about as well. Which has, again, made me very confused about the question, because there are so many questions I want to ask you. So I think I'm going to say something different, which is that to know what the right question is. Maybe the answer is 42.
What a great reference.
We just don't know the question yet.
Yes. What is the right question to ask? Which I think is a really nice question to ask.
Because that, again, changes our thinking.
Yes, it moves you out of the linear
Absolutely.
and into the expanse of the openness, the willingness to receive.
I'll end on this. Whatever somebody is asking of themselves in that moment that makes them feel the way that they don't want to feel, if you could say to them, could you ask a different question of yourself? Not like, why do I feel rubbish right now? Or, actually, what am I really proud of? What works for me? What could I enjoy in this moment? Change the question, change your life.
I love it. Thank you so much, Johnny. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Evan.
Well, look at you making it to the end of the episode. Welcome. There's a lot more for you to do. If you're still here, there's a full playlist on YouTube down below. There's a recommended video probably somewhere around the screen or down below, and so much more. Give us a follow, help share if you're here. Hey, maybe you enjoyed it. And look, this show only grows with your help. So again, I know you're probably bored of hearing it, but it would mean the world to me if you help us out and paid it forward and shared it around. And hey, you never know how this will help someone else. So thank you so much for being here, for being a part of it. Lots of love, and here is to your success. See you soon.